here with Chief Ludwig, the President and Chair of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And Chief, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on today in telemedicine in the fire service. And in particular, you're familiar with the ET3 program, and before all of the COVID debacle, that was set to kick off its trial, and now I guess formally has been pushed back, but telemedicine is now being leveraged and used just about everywhere across the country. And wanted to get your thoughts about not only its use today during this crisis, but now kind of the acceleration and use and implementation of telehealth and telemedicine within the fire service and elsewhere on a longer term basis, and maybe more quickly than it otherwise may have been adopted.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because it's so important. As we say, as I like to say, the only thing that is constant is change. And so this 50-year-old model that we have of you call 911, we come out with an ambulance, we put you in the ambulance, we take you to the emergency room. That 50-year-old model is dead. That is no longer effective. The efficacy of that is just shot. So it's, we need to start looking at how we deliver care and what is the most efficient ways of delivering care. And telemedicine is such an exemplary way of doing that, combining with the ET3 program, where you might transport somebody to an alternative type of destination, pathway management, if you will. I've had an opportunity to go to Houston, look at the Ethan project, and I thought that was an exceptional program. And so, I actually see this as a wave of the future. When you start talking about the bills that are currently in front of Congress on next generation 911, I can see all these programs being tied in together, and their FirstNet systems that are out there, where we're going to be leveraging that and using the data that we're pushing across the FirstNet systems and using telemedicine on the ET3 programs. So I'm actually a proponent of instead of giving the paramedics the ability to treat, we've been trying to work with Congress through this COVID process and also CMS about treat in place programs and also get reimbursement for that. They're not so keen on that, but I think that's where telemedicine comes in at. So it might be not the paramedic with their skill set out in the field, making the determination whether someone needs to be treated in place and not transported, but then through telemedicine with the doctor on the line, that we can check in with them and we can give them all the vital information we need to do, what needs to occur, and they can say, you know what, you're fine to leave them right there. We're good to leave them right there. And that's where telemedicine, and I think, is going to play such an important role in eradicating this 50-year-old model that is just really obsolete at this point.
No, that's a great point, Chief. I mean, as a paramedic yourself, and I was a paramedic for a long time, if we look at the way we've always transported everybody to a definitive emergency room for the most part, because that's what our Centers for Medicare Services and our insurance companies kind of dictated as the model, it is outdated. And today we now have the technology, you mentioned FirstNet, and having a nationwide public safety broadband network that's dedicated to our first responders allows them to know that they can have encrypted, HIPAA compliant, two-way video communication going to and from an ER, or to your point, a physician at an alternative site or the patient's physician to make a logical decision on what's the best care for that particular patient. And we have a lot of not necessarily proper use of our fire and EMS services all the time for transport when it's not needed. And in these tight times, we need to be efficient and effective with those resources. So I do believe that leveraging two-way video, leveraging telemedicine, both in the field, and leveraging physician interaction with EMS and patients in the field is getting a huge boost, because the coronavirus pandemic has forced us to take that change a lot faster. But right. I also think it's going to make everyone realize that the valuable assets we have of firefighters and paramedics in the field, we also want them available to go to the next call if they don't need to be transporting somebody 30 miles away, or spending time waiting at an ER to drop off a patient for somebody who's not critical. These are the kinds of things that are due for a change, and I think that hopefully the telemedicine acceptance that we've now seen during coronavirus just becomes permanent. And I think as some of these bills are passed too, that's a good one to ask Congress about and have them just make it a permanent change rather than a temporary change.
Yeah, I think we all get those horror stories of those calls that we've gone on over our years. And the one that reminds me it always comes that I can never forget it, is the one I had in St. Louis early in my career. And this guy had chest pain for 17 years. And then it stopped one night, and then he called 911. Oh my God. And we asked him, why would you call 911 after 17 years after the chest pain stops? He says, well, I think there's something wrong because the chest pain stopped. And, that's where telemedicine would be so practical and something like this. You get the doctor on the phone, you run some EKGs, you send them the EKG strip, you transmit it to them, give them all the other vital signs you got, the doctor says, he's fine, just stay right there. But we wound up putting that person in an ambulance and taking them down to the local hospital in St. Louis, which was the city-owned hospital at the time. So, just such a truly inefficient way of doing business. And we have such the technology in place now to make things like that happen where we could be so efficient. And it's time to leverage that.
Yeah, and taking it to another level, right? It's not just about emergency response. When people think about telemedicine, oftentimes, certainly with first responders, it's emergency response. But there are community paramedicine programs, that are popping up all over the country now, funded by a lot of different mechanisms. In some cases, by the local hospital systems, not even by the agency itself. Where you have dedicated paramedics, in an SUV who are going out and doing well checks or doing checks on folks, after discharge from hospital, to help prevent the frequent flyers, right, and do other things that, again, and this is, I think, the really key point is it not only helps with better patient outcomes, but to TJ's point and your point, it frees up critical resources so that they can go where they really are needed to be in person, right? And they're not on a call where they have to transport somebody just because, the regulations require them to do it, or, that's been the way that they've done it for time immemorial. So I think that's just critical. And there's so many different programs. It can really transform, I think, the entire way that we address, emergency medical services, both from a response perspective, but proactively in terms of community paramedicine.
Yeah, and we just got to get some of the bureaucrats in Congress and the bureaucrats at Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to buy into that. That's what the ET3 models are obviously going to do, but those are transporting alternative destinations. But I think the other important part is treat in place. That we can treat them and just leave them in place. And then I keep thinking about all the other possibilities, including language interpreters. So it might not necessarily be, the telemedicine component where we're actually translating information back and forth, the data. We're actually we can't communicate maybe when we get there, but you can get some type of translator or interpreter online that is able to speak the person's language, and we're able to deal with that issue. In the past, I've seen medics just say, "Well, we don't know what's going on, but we'll just take it to the hospital." And again, we can use that as a tool to discern what's going on and maybe treat in place or go to alternative. So it's beyond the medical part. It's also the language barriers that we experience.